Zack Snyder's Justice League fucking rocks. What happened to Zack Snyder cannot be described as anything less than a tragedy. Not only did he lose a loved one, but a film he put so much love into, a film that took years to build up to, a film that was arguably his biggest project yet, was stolen from him. More specifically, the top suits up there in Warner Brothers, fueled by their anger because of the mixed reception of Batman v Superman, pressured the grieving filmmaker to make a movie that wasn't his. Instead of a 3-hour-long epic with innovative journeys for these godlike icons, DC wanted to copy Marvel. They wanted a 2-hour and 30-minute movie that played it safe, had a colorful aesthetic, and quippy humor. Understandably, due to his recent loss, Zack had no energy to fight the studio, and he left to return to his family after a good bit of filming had been completed. So Warner Brothers hired Joss Whedon, the director of both The Avengers and Avengers Age of Ultron, to make some finishing touches to the film. And by finishing touches, I mean butchering the entire movie by removing integral scenes, adding new ones that are either unnecessary, make no sense, or are unfaithful to these versions of the characters, color grading the movie to look like a Nickelodeon cartoon, and a desperate attempt to compete with Marvel, had the movie infested with unfunny joke after unfunny joke. The movie was a train wreck. But at the time of this movie's release, I actually liked it. While I didn't think it was breathtaking or that it even held a candle to Man of Steel or BVS, I thought it was harmless fun. Even though the plot didn't make sense and it was totally a far cry from the last two films in Zack's trilogy, I was too busy having fun seeing the Justice League on screen to care. And then I found out what happened behind the scenes. Not just because of how we were robbed of Zack's original vision, but because of how much of an ass Joss Whedon was on set. I will never be able to enjoy the first two Avengers movies as much as I used to because this guy is a joke. Terrible directing aside, he treated the cast like garbage. Not only did he shoot down any advice they gave him about his garbage script, but he did so super disrespectfully. He boasted about his talent and had an ego larger than his forehead. He locked Gal Gadot in a closet and threatened her career because she gave him advice about his uncharacteristic portrayal of Wonder Woman. He destroyed Ray Fisher's character, who meant the world to him, and after viewing Snyder's original cut, stated, "We can't have an angry black man at the center of the film." You remember this unfunny joke in his version when Barry falls on Diana's tits? Where the actress was so understandably against filming this scene, they brought in a stunt double. This scene was so integral to the movie in Whedon's mind that he brought in a stunt double to finish it. That's also just one of the many times he sexualizes Wonder Woman throughout the movie. Oh, and before filming began, Zack felt a little uncomfortable writing a black character to the lens of a white man, so he directly consulted Ray in the direction of how Victor Stone would be portrayed, and they both worked together to make him the heart of the film. Something that meant so much to Ray. So after Whedon cut out everything that made his character compelling in the original cut, making him say an uncharacteristic catchphrase for this version of the character while simultaneously giving him the tired trope of giving the only black character in the movie some wacky catchphrase was the final straw, and Ray refused to say the line. But his efforts were in vain since he was forced by both Whedon and the studio executives to give in and say the line. And when he does so, you can actually see the pain in his face. Booyah. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I could go on and on about the countless allegations about Whedon, and not just this production, but several. It's one thing to not be a good director. It's one thing to not respect the original vision of a project. But whenever some wannabe big shot acts like he can treat the cast however he wants, it genuinely pisses me off. So yeah, after hearing about that, releasing the Snyder Cut quickly became more major. This wasn't just about seeing a better version of the film anymore. This was about an artist's integrity. And after a huge amount of vocal demand in the form of the hashtag Release the Snyder Cut movement, Warner Brothers caved. After 4 years, it was announced that the real version of the movie was releasing on HBO Max. And on March 18th, 2021, the version we should have seen in 2017 was finally released. And boy, what a film. Zack Snyder's Justice League has grown to be one of my favorite superhero films of all time. I don't even know where to start. Every issue of the dreaded Whedon version has either been addressed or removed altogether. This is the film Man of Steel and Batman v Superman was building up to. This was the film the actors, cinematographers, sound composers, special effects artists, and most of all, Zack Snyder put his heart and soul into. This is Zack Snyder's Justice League. I'll start small and discuss the 4:3 full screen aspect ratio. When I first found out the movie was shot like this, I was very unsure of this direction, mostly because pretty much everything I watch is in widescreen. However, I can confidently say that after this, I wouldn't mind seeing more films shot like this. I am not a movie expert and I am not going to pretend like I am one, so I don't have the right words for it, but something about this film being full screen just makes what's happening on screen come off as more grand and epic. I've heard a lot of complaints about this movie's CGI, and I just don't see it. Granted, it took me years to see what people were talking about with Superman's upper lip in Whedon's version, so my eye isn't the most vigilant when it comes to special effects, but to me, everything looked pretty cool. While we're on visuals, I also want to take a moment and praise Steppenwolf's original design. I cannot for the life of me think of any conceivable reason of why Whedon thought this needed to change. Was it in an effort to make him less scary? Because to say he was successful in doing so would be a pretty big understatement. Seriously, Steppenwolf in Justice League looks like Shinnok from Mortal Kombat found his way into the wrong Warner Brothers property. Also, quick side note, there's a version of this movie available on HBO Max called Justice Served in Grey. It's the same film, but in black and white. I know black and white movies aren't all that appealing nowadays, but I highly recommend each of you watch this version at least once. It makes the movie have a much more gothic and DC comic booky feel if you get what I mean. Some shots in particular look like it came straight from a comic book panel. Now going over to the story side of things, everything is given much more context. For example, Steppenwolf's base. I gotta say, hiding in the middle of a populated town isn't the smartest move an intergalactic conqueror can make. However, here in the original film, it's explained that the base is actually a perfect hiding spot because not only is it in the middle of an abandoned town, but one that was evacuated due to the surrounding radiation. The only way the Justice League do find the base is because of the mother box being superheated and visual under thermal charts of Bruce's satellites, and the only reason they're able to attack the base is because the surrounding radiation was harvested to build a protective nest. We also find out much more about the mother boxes. In Justice League, the only reason we're able to find out about their existence is because of a random parademon exploding and leaving behind a goo puddle outlining the boxes. A second grader could come up with a more convincing introduction. In Justice League, not only do we find out about them in ways that make sense, but it's also explained what they are. They're machines that have the power to change and reshape matter to their master's desires, and if all three are combined together, they have the power to scorch an entire planet, which is why Steppenwolf wants them. Speaking of Steppenwolf, can I just mention how amazing Darkseid's presence is in this film? There's only 3 scenes of him present, and he barely had any lines, and yet this movie makes you fear the possibility of him coming to Earth. Throughout the film, similar to BVS, we see brief visions of the future. A future where Darkseid has conquered Earth and has slain both Wonder Woman and Aquaman. A future where following the death of Lois, Superman has become a servant of Darkseid. A future where Batman is beheaded by the very man he saw as a beacon of hope. The most terrifying part about this possible reality is it's bound to happen. While it's unclear if we'll ever get to see this part in the arc actually happen in the form of a movie, if Warner Brothers get over their incompetence and let Zack direct more sequels, this will be what happens. It no longer feels like sequel baiting. It not only makes the resurrection of Superman much more of a big deal, but it actually makes Darkseid's presence alone intimidating. The MCU had over 20 movies to build up Thanos, and while he turned out to be a spectacular villain, no one was necessarily scared of him before he proved he was a force to be reckoned with. Zack had 3 movies, and Darkseid is already super intimidating. That's impressive. The film also does a good job at setting up the anti-life equation, which gives Darkseid a good reason to invade Earth. And also, this is another side note, but the flashback battle scene is actually amazing in this film. And having Darkseid instead of Steppenwolf is a way cooler decision since we can actually get a sense of how powerful this dude is. And I have a better time believing this dude could take on Zeus, the Atlanteans, the Amazons, a Green Lantern, and Ares all at once rather than a weak underling. By the way, when a Green Lantern showed up in his full glory in front of the camera, I actually fanboyed so hard during my first viewing. I didn't even notice him in the Whedon version. So enough of the plot. What about the characters? Oh, we have a lot to talk about. The first I'll talk about is Bruce Wayne, Batman. I'm surprised so many people aren't talking about his arc in this movie because it's so satisfying to see. One of my major gripes with Batman v Superman criticism is people thinking it's wrong for Batman to kill people. If you think it's bad for Batman to kill people, congratulations, you figured out the entire point of his character in that movie. While seeing Batman punch people through walls, burn people alive, and bulldoze people with his Batmobile is badass from a visual standpoint, it was never supposed to be morally accepted from a narrative standpoint. We were supposed to think what he was doing was wrong. This Bruce Wayne is an old one who has witnessed so much death and loss over his years of fighting crime in Gotham, and after losing his adopted son to an insane clown, he has now lost faith in not only humanity but also in his righteous moral code. One of the beautiful parts of that film was seeing Superman's sacrifice inspire Bruce to see faith in humanity again. That's why Bruce is no longer branding people. He's no longer killing people with his Batmobile. He's no longer the same Batman we saw him as in the last movie. He is now an optimist, fueled by his guilt over the death of Superman, which in turn brought a huge wave of hopelessness to the world. He is now dead set on uniting it again. He went from being a pessimistic hero turned monster to being a hero who operates on faith, not rationality. This was seen in Justice League, but it's done in the original cut in such a better fashion without that god-awful Batman v Wonder Woman subplot. Diana Prince, Wonder Woman. Just like Bruce, Diana was also inspired by Superman's heroic death, and she has come out of hiding to be a hero. Not only that, but in a genre that is male-dominated, having a figure young girls can look up to and aspire to be is amazing. Oh, and one very subtle and mature reason why I like Diana in this film is due to the fact that she is bad ass. The only nitpick I have isn't even a problem with the movie. However, it feels like Snyder's version of the character kind of conflicts with Patty Jenkins. They're both spiritually the same person, but the only thing that differs is the way they handle human foes. In Patty's films, Diana tends to go easy on weaker opponents such as humans. In this movie, however, don't get me wrong, I can't help but prefer the Wonder Woman who doesn't hold back, but if you're coming off of Patty's movies, that scene might be a little off-putting. But yeah, Wonder Woman is awesome in this, as if there was any doubt. Next is Barry Allen, the Flash. In Whedon's version, this guy was not at all likable. He wasn't offensively poorly written, but he wouldn't shut up. It was generous calling him a character. However, the Flash, like everyone and everything else in this version, is actually good. He's much more than a dumb kid playing dress-up constantly spitting out jokes. He's an actual human. A young man working multiple dead-end jobs to get a justice degree to one day get his falsely accused dad out of prison. Another good thing about his character is he's already a hero. While he's young and jokes a lot, there's a reason he's in the Justice League. He doesn't need a motivational pep talk to save people, he just does. His joking exterior is a fun trait of his personality, not the entire basis of it. And that scene, no, the scene, where the Justice League fails and the Earth is destroyed, Barry has to risk his life and run so fast, he reverses time in what is a visually stunning scene accompanied by an amazing score. This is the moment where Barry has to make a leap from an inexperienced, bumbling hero to the man who saves the planet. It's a beautiful moment where he takes his dad's words earlier in the film to heart. And keep in mind, all of this was switched out for this.
Dostoevsky.
Next is Clark Kent, Superman. While he understandably doesn't have as much screen time as the other members due to being resurrected halfway through the film, he's still treated pretty well. Not only is his resurrection treated much more seriously, but we get the nice scene with him being reunited with Lois and Martha, which always makes my heart swell up. And we also get an additional scene not present in the reading cut where Clark visits his ship and has the words of both of his fathers played through his head until he dons his black suit, which looks sick. And when he showed up in the final battle, it didn't feel lackluster or cheap, as if he was saving the day after his inferior teammates failed. Not only was his team doing a decent job before his arrival, but when he shows up at the nick of time to save Victor after Steppenwolf got the upper hand on Diana and Arthur, it doesn't feel like a cheap cop-out. He has to actively put in a lot of work to hold Steppenwolf back, and the other teammates played necessary roles to stopping the mother boxes. And when Superman does show up at the end, the build-up to this moment this version did an infinitely better job at doing. But when it happened, I actually get super excited each time, even though I know it's coming. Next is Arthur Curry, Aquaman. I have a confession to make. I still have not seen Aquaman. I might wait till I get around to reviewing it. Even though I've heard nothing but good things about it, I just haven't gotten around to watching it for some reason. So obviously my understanding of this character is limited compared to the others since he doesn't undergo some major arc, but he is still undeniably a fun character. He has a very rough, couldn't care less attitude, but there's many instances where you can tell he has a big heart. He provides food to a small impoverished town, he helps people in peril while on the seas, he shows up to try to stop Steppenwolf from robbing Atlantis of its mother box, and he shows genuine concern over everything Victor has gone through. I also like this laid-back, cool version of Aquaman. I know his design, along with his personality, is old news, but this film was the first to conceptualize this version of the character, and it's still a cool take. And last but certainly not least is Victor Stone, Cyborg. If it hasn't become apparent yet, I saved the best for last. Victor Stone was a genius in school and an extraordinary football player who had a loving mother. But his father, too busy with his work, never made time for Victor, unlike his mother who dies in a car accident along with her son. However, in a desperate attempt to keep his son alive, his father transformed him into a cyborg using a mother box. Both Zack Snyder and Ray Fisher has referred to Cyborg as the heart of the film. And they're right. His journey in this movie encompasses everything each of his teammates have gone through in some way. After his tragic accident, he eventually starts honing his new abilities and learns how to fly, while also managing digital systems. This montage is beautiful, and there's even a part where he hacks into a bank to give a poor mother $1 million, which shows that no matter what, he has a good heart. And after he joins the team, he starts to slowly learn how to forgive his father once he sees how much he really means to him, which merely makes his sacrifice in the later part of the film much more tragic. And at the end, where he confronts the mother boxes, he not only learns to accept himself, but to also accept he's not alone. And all of this is portrayed so perfectly by Ray Fisher, who puts his heart and soul into this character. And all of this was taken out in exchange for... Booyah. What a joke. So yeah, that's my thoughts on each of the Justice League members, and it's clear Zack had a clear vision for who these characters were going to be, and the ones we've already seen were shown to have personally grown to be better people since the last film. He didn't write any of them to be one-dimensional or generic despite how they may come off. Each of them are human, something Zack has always been an expert at doing. Take Steppenwolf for example. Don't think I forgot about him. Who we initially thought was a blank slate Darkseid underling actually has a goal beyond scorching the planet. Due to being banished from his home planet Apocalypse, he has to conquer planet after planet just to return home. But once it turns out Earth has the anti-life equation, he finally has a chance for redemption. While he's not Thanos levels of complex, he really doesn't need to be. He has a good reason for being here, he has a good reason for scorching the Earth, and he has a clear goal that he's after. To return home. To get redemption. Going back to the Justice League, one thing I love about Zack's film is how they feel like an actual team. While there was more goofy banter in the Whedon version, they did not at all feel like a team. Regarding that awful arguing between Bruce and Diana, it felt like everyone did not like Bruce. Not only that, but Bruce, Flash, and Cyborg were completely useless to the team, and it didn't feel like any of them truly cared for each other. Just listen to what Bruce says near the climax in both versions.
I'm gonna take out that tower and knock down that shield dome. You get to Steppenwolf. Don't wait for me. Just do the job.
I'm gonna take out that tower and knock down that shield dome. Whatever you see. Stick to the plan. That's why I brought you together.
See what I mean? In the original version of the film, not only are Bruce, Barry, and Victor shown to be great assets to the team, but they genuinely care about each other. Like when Arthur feels terrible after Victor loses his father. If it hasn't become apparent yet, let me make it as clear as possible. This movie's story is not only a masterpiece on its own, but it's a far cry from the garbage we saw in 2017. Like I said, I did not mind Whedon's Justice League when it came out, but if I would have known what I was missing, I would have disowned that film way sooner along with everyone else. I want to go over some more technical things before I conclude this review. One thing that's also obvious is that the action scenes in this movie are spectacular. They're visually stunning, directed fantastically, and always get my adrenaline rushing. Especially that Batmobile parademon chase. Oh my god. The most boring sequence in Whedon's version is my favorite in Zack's. Another vast improvement from that 2017 dumpster fire is the score. So much weight to these scenes are amplified by the amazing score created by Tom Hockenborg, which can range from blood pumping to beautiful. And one other thing I want to talk about is this film having an R rating. While it does show scenes that have a good bit of blood in them, and there's a few swear words, I do not think this movie deserves to have an R rating. If this movie has an R rating, that kind of shows how unnecessarily strict the guidelines are starting to be. But you know what? If a film being rated R is what we need to have action scenes like these, I am down to see more rated R superhero films. So yeah, now it's time for me to end this review already, but before I do so, I just want to say how thankful I am that there's people like Zack Snyder in the film industry. I know a lot of his haters like to make fun of those who praise his brilliance by calling us cultists or whatever, but I don't care. There was a time where I didn't know how to truly look at movies. Like everyone else, I thought there was a formula to these sort of things. When Man of Steel and Batman v Superman came out, I couldn't think of why in the world Zack wasn't doing what the MCU was doing when it came to plot points and tone. Well, he already answered that question. While he likes those type of films, he truly believes that anyone who attempts to copy them are insane. And then it hit me. My least two favorite films in the DCEU, Suicide Squad and Whedon's Justice League, are terrible for that exact reason. They wanted so desperately to be Marvel. They tried to duplicate their formula. They chased common MCU trends, and as a result, they had no identity. However, even when the entire world, including myself, was hating on Zack, he stood his ground as an artist. He never came on board to the DCEU to make Marvel movies. He wanted to take the grand mythos of the DC universe and make films that were both innovative and thought-provoking. But most of all, he just wanted to make good movies that we could enjoy. He never lied to the fans or tried to invalidate their arguments. He never treated the actors like garbage on set. He showed up, had fun with the cast and accepted their input, and put his soul into making a good movie. And what did he get in return? He got unrelenting hate from fans and had his greatest film mutilated and distorted under the false narrative that his original vision was being kept. Not only have I grown to love Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, but I am also disgusted of how I used to view not only Zack, but other directors who made movies that I personally didn't like. One thing I have learned over the years is no one makes a movie to be bad deliberately. No one makes a movie to disappoint you on purpose. And we need to stop acting toxic every time a movie doesn't meet our expectations. Directors are everyday people like you and me who just want to tell a story. Their story. And if not artists, we should at least have the human decency to respect them as people. I don't dislike Joss Whedon or Rian Johnson because they made a horrible movie. I dislike those two because not only do they manipulate the actors they work with, but they also treat fans of the IP they are currently meddling with like garbage. And yes, Joss Whedon is infinitely worse than Rian Johnson, but I wanted a second example. I also wanted to thank Zack Snyder for opening my eyes on art in general, for showing me that making a story doesn't have to revolve around a tired formula and that an artist has the right to express their creativity to their fullest contempt. As an aspiring storyteller, I could not be more grateful for that lesson. Zack Snyder's Justice League is a phenomenal movie. The pacing is amazing, which is impressive for a 4-hour long film. The action scenes are exhilarating, and there's so much heart in the overall story and characters. At the time I'm scripting this review, I have already watched this movie 3 times. Once with my dad on the first viewing, the second in black and white, and the third for this review. And I'm planning on watching it a 4th time. Oh, and that final scene with Ben Affleck's Batman and Jared Leto's Joker finally interacting with each other for the first time in the DCEU was a great scene. Not only because it was written, shot, directed, and acted really well, but also because it was a first glimpse at what could be if Warner Brothers valued the creativity of our artist and allowed him to finish his story without further interference. For those of you who don't know, this movie was meant to be third in a 5-film series. But we most likely will never see what Zack had planned for these characters in this world. And that honestly breaks my heart. While I am happy we got to see the Snyder Cut, I want to see the end of this story. That's why I am one out of many currently demanding for Warner Brothers to restore the Snyderverse. Seeing how disrespectful the studio is to not only the fans but also Zack himself, not to mention the actors, it's highly unlikely they'll give us what we want. But I'm going to try. And if you care about restoring this universe, tweet at Warner Brothers to #restore the Snyderverse. It's time we fought against the studio and show our support for the artists who put the money in their wallets at the end of the day. Thank you, Zack Snyder. Hey guys, thank you so much for reaching the end of this video. Real quick, I just want to shout out my Wattpad account. For those of you into reading, I'm working on an entire catalog of novels, some of which are fanfictions of existing stories I'm super passionate about, like Resident Evil in the DC universe. If you would be so kind as to check it out and maybe read what I currently have on there, your support would be more than appreciated. With all that said, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.